All right. Well, we have a nice full agenda today, so we can probably go ahead and get started. Thanks for joining, everyone. Joey is on vacation at the moment, so I am going to step in and kind of take on his role today. I do not have the same typing and speaking skills that he does, but we'll do our best. So we'll kick things off first with Rob and Danny, who are going to talk about the PS ARM preview.
Yeah, thanks, Sydney. So about, I'd say 2 weeks ago, I think, we released a module called PS ARM, and which stands for PowerShell ARM, and it is a module to author ARM templates in a more, I'd say, PowerShell-friendly way. And so think of it as like a mix between iterative and declarative. So we got iterative loops, pipelines, conditionals, and declarative, like I'd say DSC to make it so. And what this is really similar to is, if you're familiar with Azure Bicep, it's very similar to Azure Bicep. We actually are using the same libraries, I'd say, behind the scenes and have a dependency on Azure Bicep. And so we kind of wanted to meet everyone where they might be. And so PS ARM is our approach for PowerShell users for easier ARM template authoring. So yeah, the great thing is you get all the benefits of the PowerShell ecosystem, secrets management, Azure PowerShell. So yeah, I think, Rob, you wanted to show a demo, so I figure that's probably the best thing to show. If you want to see more of PS ARM, there is, I would check out the PS ARM repo, but I think, Rob, you were going to show a demo.
Yep, absolutely. So let me share my screen, make sure I get the right one. So this is the PS ARM repo. Naturally, I've lost the call. Also, please forgive me if you hear my washing machine in the background. But if you go to GitHub/PowerShell/PS ARM, you'll get the PS ARM. Wow, the embedded, the way the link explodes in the chat is quite big. But anyway, this is the PS ARM GitHub repository, and the README sort of talks about okay, how it all works and what the intent is and all these things. So have a read there. But there it is rendered for you. But just to sort of give you an example, this is one of the examples that we have in the repository that talks about that there's like a demo for how you might use PS ARM. And just to show you sort of how it works, the idea is that we can do things like hook into PowerShell completions and use those to sort of make a lot of ARM and ARM template authoring a lot more discoverable, so that we can say get to the types that we're looking for in an ARM template really quickly and easily with PowerShell, but also with all of the dynamism that PowerShell provides, so that we can do something like, well, I'm just sort of showing off the completion properties at this point, but see if we ask for a completion here, we get private IP allocation method, and you can see that if the completions load, my completion seemed to have died, but it's able to do things like pick up on the particular allowed values for properties within templates. The keywords are specific to each resource type, and the completions and the full template instantiation hook in there. So if you can take a module like this, sorry, an ARM script like this, and you can take the, so I just have some parameters here in a file, and I'm going to convert those from JSON into some parameters for my ARM script. And you can see that this particular example has some parameters, some of which are mandatory, as long as I rearrange the syntax, many of which have default values. And then I can use publish PSARM template with the parameters that I just read in from I store it in a JSON because that's how we test this, but really you can just provide these as a hash table and then invoke it on this file, which is at examples, Linux VM, that one, and it'll sort of do a bunch of magic and then spit out a new ARM template for you, which is based on this this script that you wrote using the PSARM DSL. In fact, we can do slightly better than that. We can say we can instead take the template that the ARM template that we use PSARM to author and get it back in an object form. And now we can sort of like examine it to see all of the things that lie on it. What have we got? Properties. So we can dive right into the structure of the template, and you can actually mutate all of that. But that's just sort of like a really quick idea of the point being that here's a DSL in PowerShell. You can use things like, do we have an example for this here? Maybe. Here we go. You can do things like use a for each loop inside your PSARM script, and it'll just work because you have all of the dynamism of PowerShell there. But also there's a DSL at work, and it tries to keep things very sort of, the syntax is very light. It doesn't try and do anything too clever. And at the end of the day, you get a nice object. So there's a lot of like configurability here. There's not too much, it doesn't try to be too magical, and it tries to keep things sort of in the PowerShell world so that you are very free to sort of mold and play with the ARM templates that you write from PowerShell in a very dynamic way. But on the other hand, it's all backed by the Bicep library. It uses their type system under the hood, so it's sort of quite nicely integrated there. Anyway, so check out the PSARM repo on GitHub. I think that's the best place to start. There's quite a bit of sort of verbiage on how it works and some examples there. It's in an early stage of the project, still very much in preview. So your feedback is very, very welcome. I'm sure there are lots of changes and improvements that we're going to make. But I think we've done some great work here, and this is something that we're hoping will be a very powerful tool for you to use into the future.
Let me just add a couple of things here. That's great, by the way, Rob. So I just want to address one thing, which is I think there's some confusion from the community, especially when it was first published on Twitter about this preview, about what is it, PSARM versus Bicep? And from our point of view, it's not, because Bicep is targeting a different set of customers who are not PowerShell users. And for PSARM, we are specifically targeting folks who already know PowerShell and prefer PowerShell to make them more productive writing ARM templates. The other thing I want to call out is, one of the original motivations for this project was to see if we could actually build some tooling for DSLs in general in PowerShell that doesn't require engine changes, so you don't need the latest version of PowerShell. So I'm hoping, and this probably won't happen anytime in the near future, we'll have something that's pulled out of PSARM that can be used, for example, by Pester or other DSLs that can get tab completion and things like that. So I'm looking forward to that in the future. And I think that covers PSARM unless there's any questions.
All right. Well, it looks like the next agenda item is Amber and I to give updates on PowerShell Get v3 and the recent PowerShell Gallery outage. So I can start off with those, and then I'll let Amber fill in any gaps or correct anything I may have said. So first on PowerShell Get v3, we are continuing to make progress on this module. We recently had quite a large PR get merged in that covered about 4 of the commandlets, and there's a few other pretty large ones open at the moment that are in code reviews and are hoping to get merged pretty soon here. So we are hoping to have a release either late this month or early next month. And this release will be complete in terms of the commandlet interface, but not necessarily completely feature complete, but hopefully fairly close. We've also been prioritizing building out our testing as we build this module. So hopefully that pays some dividends when we get to these upcoming releases. And then, of course, we look forward to all of you letting us know where all the issues are once we do have those releases out. So hopefully in the next few weeks, we'll have something pretty solid and fairly complete that will be ready for a preview release. And then in terms of PowerShell Gallery, we did have an outage. I believe it was on March 22nd. So this was due to a certificate issue, and I just want to definitely apologize for any pain and issues that caused, and thank everyone who reached out to us so quickly to report the issue. Essentially, the summary of what happened was that our certificate was renewed, but the thumbprint did not update properly because a deployment had not happened within the time frame from which the new cert had been generated to the time the old cert had expired. We had recently increased the frequency of which certs are automatically renewed, which meant that our window for deployment was suddenly significantly shorter than in the past, and this was not something we had appropriately accounted for. So we did make a few repair items to automate this process further and avoid this issue going forward. But Amber, I don't know if you want to fill in on anything else on either of those topics.
Yeah, I just wanted to say something really quickly about PowerShell Get. So in May, we are planning on having opening up the repository to community contributions. So if you've been interested in getting involved with PowerShell Get v3, then keep an eye out for that. But that will happen sometime in May.
Yeah, that's a great call. And then the one thing I would add to that is we are going to be trying to follow a similar model to how the PowerShell PowerShell repo operates in terms of community contributions, in terms of starting out with an issue as a design discussion and kind of moving into the PR process from there, rather than necessarily starting with the PR process. Alrighty, and then I believe that Steve is up next to talk about 7.2, minimal PowerShell, and anything else.
Yep. So everyone hopefully saw that we shipped the 7.2 preview 5 yesterday. It has a bunch of interesting changes, and I think later on Jim will give one of those discussions or demos on the important breaking change that we want to get feedback on. So I'm not going to cover that. I think the important thing really is we're still sticking with our monthly release cycle for the previews, and we appreciate all the feedback you guys are giving to us. One of the changes we are trying with the 7.2 preview 5 release is that we opened a discussion on GitHub in our repo, which I will try to find and paste it in the chat in a second, as a way to kind of solicit feedback on the preview release to indicate if there's any major problems, or maybe someone else can paste it. So that covers that in general. I also just want to mention, and I don't know if Travis is on the call right now, but he's one of the engineers on the PowerShell team. He's made really good progress on being able to publish PowerShell 7 to a Microsoft update. It's not ready yet, and I don't want to set a date of when that will show up for you guys to dog food. But I'm looking forward to being able to have that as another way to install PowerShell 7 on Windows. The last thing, there were some questions I saw about minimal PowerShell. So let me talk about that real quick at a high level. So the goal of minimal PowerShell really is it's not for the developer desktop that's really beefy and you can install everything. It's really for more on the managed node side, especially with headless cases, containers, and other places where you really want to have as small a set of binaries, but also a small attack surface and patching surface as possible, right? Because you don't need all the capabilities. You may know ahead of time some specific scripts you're going to run, so you don't need WinForms, I don't know what else to pick on, but there are a lot of .NET assemblies that we throw in the PowerShell 7 package today. They kind of give you the Windows PowerShell .NET framework experience where you have almost every API available. In many cases, you don't need all that, so there's no reason to ship all that. So that's kind of like at a high level the goal. Now, with that said, there's a bunch of different parts, and one of the parts that we're doing in 7.2 is we're exploring, can we pull up parts of system management automation assembly, which is this huge monolithic assembly that contains a whole bunch of stuff, right? It has like the parser, the engine, remoting, help system, I don't know, a whole bunch of different things. So you can imagine in a headless managed node container case, you don't need the help system. You may not even need remoting. You may not need like formatting and stuff like that. So we have devised a way, and this was first used by the prediction plugin to dynamically have subsystems in PowerShell. So in 7.2, we're exploring two subsystems. One is DSC, and I wrote about this in the, or I will talk about it in the PS Summit talk. I don't think I had a blog post about this. I don't remember now. But anyways, so the DSC configuration keyword is actually part of the PowerShell engine today, which means that we can't, continue to update DSC without updating PowerShell. So one of the goals is to separate that out. So there is work happening to try to pull that out and put it as part of PS Desire State Configuration module. So PS Desire State Configuration module going forward will be the self-contained DSC platform. So that's one subsystem. The other one that I know is more interesting to a lot of community folks is the remoting subsystem. So there's two parts here. And originally, I was hoping we would be able to pull out the whole remoting subsystem, because in cases where you don't need remoting, meaning client-side remoting going out, you don't need to have that there. But realistically, I think that we're only going to focus on being able to pull out specific transports. So for PowerShell remoting today, we support a bunch of transports, right? We support WSMan, SSH, VM bus or PowerShell Direct, name pipes, and all these other ones. And so we want to make that a pluggable system so that people in the community can actually have their own transports. And I know there's a couple of folks already kind of experimenting with that with the PowerShell code base, and we had to kind of reject some of those PRs. But this will hopefully enable people to do this and be able to publish these as modules on the PowerShell gallery. So I am hoping that still makes it in. Again, I don't have a time frame of when that will show up, but that is something we are targeting for 7.2, and it'll probably stay experimental potentially in 7.2 until we kind of figure out whether or not the subsystem interfaces are sufficient for everything that we want to pull out. The last thing I'll just mention about minimal PowerShell is this is not something that will be complete in 7.2. This is going to be a long journey. There's a lot of stuff that has to happen. The subsystems is only one part of it. There's also stuff like, if you look at the management module, the utility module, even like security module, there's a bunch of commandlets in there that don't make sense or not heavily used in all cases. And it makes sense to kind of split those up. Like the web commandlets out of utility may make sense as its own module. So there's some thinking that we need to do to make that happen. And then there's a question like if using fully qualified, where you have the module name and the commandlet name, we don't want to break that. So then we have to kind of create something to have like module forwarding kind of capabilities. So there's a bunch of work that'll happen. So I don't know when we'll get this done, like maybe 7.4, which would be our next LTS. But this is a long journey. There's going to be a bunch of work. So I think that kind of covers everything I want to talk about there. Unless anyone popped up some questions.
Travis just posted a issue you may want to mention.
I have to open up to see what this is.
I can talk about it.
Oh, go ahead, Travis.
For the Linux packages, we have been able to collapse those down into two packages, a Red Hat package and a Debian package. So this changes the install instructions. So like when you're installing, if you're not installing from the repos, you need to make sure you update the package that you're installing from to either the deb or the RPM package and just install that. Otherwise, it should be the same.
Travis, is the great advantage here that now our Linux packages are not distro specific. We just have one deb for all Debian-like things and one RPM for all Red Hat-like distros?
Right.
Awesome.
I've done this work. It's taken a few months to get this all done, but One goal here is we did not attempt to fix any of the issues with libmi. Those issues are actually with libmi, not the packaging. And all I did is try not to break libmi any worse than it's already broken.
All right. Is Dombo
So-
ready to talk about the next,
Yep.
or should we move on? Sorry,
Yep.
Sydney.
Oh, no, I was just gonna say Dongbo, I think, is up next. So same
Sure.
page.
Let me share my screen. Hi, so I'm going to talk about this cleanup function block feature. This is a PR submitted by Joe Sato, 2 years ago almost, 2019. So I'm sorry that it had been there had been not enough traction on this PR to get it to completion from the team. And but in 7.2 cycle, the team decided to put more resources on the feature level contributions from the community, and this PR becomes it's at the top of the list. So I'll be working on driving this feature to completion, and currently a draft PR was submitted with for an implementation of a different design, and I have described the differences in my most recent comment in the original PR. So the draft PR has a proposal for the error handling behavior for the new clean functional block, the new cleanup function block, and so it's pretty it's written in detail. So please take a look if you're interested, and any feedback is very welcome. So for now, the next step will be waiting for the community review on this error handling behavior, this description. And once it's accepted, there's gonna be a lot of writing on the error handling test. And then at the same time, we will be looking at necessary changes to the step of pipeline integration and the variable analysis integration for this clean block. And then there's gonna be a functional behavior review by the community again, by the committee again, to basically lay out all the behaviors this new function block, this new name block, this new clean block, gonna expose. And after the functional behavior review, there's gonna be more functional tests. So my target right now for this feature to be completion is next release, so the release in May. But if we miss this one, I'm confident that this feature will be complete for the June release. So yeah, that's basically the quick update on this cleanup function block feature.
Let me add a couple of quick things. Thanks, Dombo. When Dombo says release, he means it'll be an experimental feature in that release. The other thing, I just want to make sure everyone understands what this is for those not following the what originally called cleanup block, and I think originally maybe called dispose block. I think I actually opened the original issue a long time back after talking to Jeffrey about this, and Joel Salek kind of picked up. I think he might have wrote the RFC, but then he submitted the PR as well. The idea here really is for script module or script authors, they want an ability to have. They don't want to wrap the whole thing in a try catch or multiple try catches so that they can actually clean something up, right? You might have something that's expensive, like a database connection or a remote connection or something else, and you want to have an operating to clean up. And I think that some folks also misunderstand that the end block is not for that purpose. That's really about part of the pipeline processing, and it may not even be called. So the idea here is to have this clean block so you can actually do cleaning. And as Dombo spent a lot of time reviewing, and also other folks like Rob reviewing Joe Salo's original PR, which was a great, we appreciate that contribution. It was clear to us that error handling, meaning what happens if there's an exception? What happens if the user hits Control-C? Those are not necessarily taken into account to be consistent with how the rest of PowerShell works, so it became much more complicated than it initially seemed. So that's why Dumbo wrote this additional draft PR to kind of address some of those issues. So please take a look at that, and hopefully we'll get it as an experimental feature, and if not the next one, the one after that, so that we can get some real-world feedback on how people like it or don't like it.
Yeah, I would just add that I will put the links to those PRs in the chat window, so it's easier for everybody to access.
Great, thanks, Dongbo. So Jim, if you're ready, you're up next, or we can circle back to you.
No, I'm good, thanks.
Perfect.
I will start presenting. One of the things that has been a part of PowerShell from the very beginning is how we construct command lines when we want to call a native executable. At the time we created PowerShell, there was really only one API available to us, and we would work really hard to construct a single string, which we could then hand off to start process. And that's a really very tricky thing to do. So one of the things that happened is in one of the recent .NET releases is they added to that API so you could use an array of character strings to pass those arguments to start process, and you'd have an easier time of constructing the string. We have a new experimental feature in the daily builds and coming up called PS native command argument passing. That is actually the kind of the gateway into this new behavior. And we have created two behaviors. We have created support for the existing behavior, but we also now have support for the new behavior, which enables behavior which is a little bit more natural. Echo it just so everybody can see. This is a very simple. It's a very simple native application. It's written in very simple C and simply tells you what the arguments are. So if you want to look at one of the things I'm going to use is I'm going to use this program as I continue to do this demo to switch between the behaviors you want to do. PS native argument passing is now a variable, an automatic variable that you can set, and it's set to standard. And one of the nice things about this new behavior is that it's much more natural when you want to create strings that have perhaps embedded spaces in it. Here's an example. So you can see if I type it right, there we go. That the embedded strings are quoted and remain so. Now, if we want to go and select the legacy behavior, you just simply set it to legacy. And now when you rerun this test, when you rerun this little example, you'll see that this is the way we would have parsed it. This is the way it would have been parsed. Well, this is the way it is parsed in everything before this experimental feature, which is you can work around it. You could work around it. You could do things like this. But again, we wanted to kind of improve this experience, so we added support to make it a little bit more natural. And it even supports things like have, for example, so things that you would, the way you would expect, and without this is what happens with legacy. Now, if I turn on standard, some things we didn't want to change because they're essentially the correct behavior. So, for example, this supports this completely and works just well. But if you have a lot of this is really the main example is this is not an uncommon MSI exec example, which will actually now work. So that gets handed completely as a parameter to to the underlying executable, well, this would not occur in the current legacy thing. So we've turned this on as an experimental feature. If you have some of these workarounds, those workarounds are going to break you. They're not going to work because the workarounds are no longer needed. And in fact, we believe what you tell us. If you're using the new argument passing code. So if you have workarounds, you can do two things. You can actually remove the workarounds, or you can set yourself your argument passing to legacy, and it should be just as it was. But we really think that this is an improvement in the experience that you have when you're trying to construct these command lines for native executables. We are aware of some Windows. I don't want to call them issues, but idiosyncrasies. It's a very strange on Windows, command.exe specifically. Command.exe, if you're calling from a batch file, the tokenization that occurs in command.exe is different for batch files than it is for executables. So you can, we're still trying to figure out the best way to address that. But this problem exists on Windows as a platform idiosyncrasy. In command.exe, if you call a batch file, the token parsing is different than if you call an executable. Strange but true. Anyway, that's kind of what we're working on. We'd love to get some feedback on this. Just let us know how you're finding it, and hopefully we can incorporate this into the next release.
I'm pretty sure this is already in preview 5, so people should be able to test it out and give us that feedback.
Great, thanks, Jim. So next up we had on the agenda was to do a community demo or two. So these are meant to be short, 5-minute demos provided by community members. We did them a few months ago or last month, I can't quite remember. But I'm not seeing any proposals in the open issue, but we can do sort of an on the fly if somebody wants to post in the chat if they have something they'd like to share, and I can promote you to presenter. If you have a quick 5-minute demo that's ready. If not, we can just jump right into the questions. I am allowing you to unmute, Justin. 1 second. It's just a little slow.
Actually, I also forgot to say something about the native command argument passing stuff.
Cool. Let's hear it.
So one of the things that I added as I was writing all this code is now if you use the PowerShell tracing mechanism, you can actually see the way that arguments are now bound, and you didn't used to get to see this. So now you can actually see the argument binding in the PowerShell engine.
Great. Justin, I'm seeing your comment, or I'd say we can go ahead and go for it. I'm not seeing anyone else. Let me see if I can promote you to a presenter right now. Come on, Teams. Make a presenter. Clicking it now.
Looks like I got it. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, awesome.
And you can hear me okay, Sydney?
Yes, we can hear you and see you.
Great. All right, let's go. So this is just a little kind of side project I've been working on. I've had a previous project, which I'll show here real quick, that I've mentioned once or twice. It's sort of a build system that I had previously for myself, but I never really made it like accessible to other people. So I've been working on kind of a newer version of this build system that both works really locally and also tightly integrates with GitHub. So what I'll show here real quick is, let me just go ahead and bring up the repository in VS Code and see if it still builds. So first of all, one of the things that it does is it sets up your VS Code with all kinds of stuff that makes it really helpful to do all kinds of testing. So it allows you, like, if your GitHub actions, see them immediately over here, be able to see all your individual tests. This is using Tyler's fantastic testing extension. And you can run the tests and see very specifically that these passed and go through them. And then it also is basically a full build system. It uses what's called Invoke Build as a scaffolding. And the way that it works is when you set up your particular repository, you just have to import this press module and then import the tasks, and the whole build system is now there. And then if you want to add to it, customize it, adjust it, you can add these additional tasks. So for instance, press actually builds itself. And so it has a couple special tasks that work for its metadata. And so when I run a build, it automatically goes through, this is going to go fast, but it automatically pulls in the prerequisites using this required modules file, automatically goes and fetches all the different modules that are needed to build it. It runs the build, it copies the files, it does a fancy little compilation where it takes all these different functions that I have defined in my module and compiles them all into a single large PowerShell module so that it loads faster. As you see here, as we go back up here, we'll do that. It will set the module version automatically based on your Git history and based on your commits if you're familiar with semantic versioning. Like, I don't define, you'll see that this guy has a module version of 0.2.4. I didn't pick that version. It's just based on whether I've made major commits, whether I made breaking feature commits. It automatically figures that out for me. It goes ahead and automatically generates release notes based on those commit information. So here's everything since the last time that I did a release. You can see that there and shows all the differences. And these, I'm using kind of emoji icons here. You can use conventional commit syntax too. I like the emojis because they make it really visible as to what's going on. But these all have semantic meaning. So for instance, bug fixes or minor changes. These twinkles, the ta-da, means that it's a new feature, and so that'll bump the major revision. And you can see that here in the history where it was at this version, I had major features that went to 2, did a bug fix, went to 2.1, went to 2.2, 2.3. And so as I do there, that's the build. And so that's how everything works locally, but it also has really tight GitHub integration now. So whenever you push a change to master, it kicks off this GitHub action that automatically runs through a whole process. It will build your module, it will cache your previous modules so that it keeps the build going really fast. It's all incremental, it goes through the build, it runs all the tests, and it automatically captures a built version of your PowerShell module, a zip, and the NuGet package as artifacts that are attached to this job. And then it automatically creates a GitHub release with release notes ready to go. So the last commit that I made, here I have a draft for my next release ready to go, already having the assets attached. And if I edit this release and I publish it, then at that point, it will automatically create a new release and publish it to the PowerShell gallery. So we'll see what that looks like here. Here's an example. And every time I push to main, it pushes a pre-release module out to PowerShell gallery so that somebody can use it if they want to. And if I just go to, let's see, what was my most recent actual release. So here's, if I were to click that publish release, it kicks this one off, which is basically the same pipeline. It does a matrix test across a bunch of different platforms to make sure that my built module is going to work cross-platform and automatically deploy it out to the PowerShell gallery. And if I go to the PowerShell gallery for press, you'll see that here's the module. You can see all those beta versions that are being built. And if you look at the details, it even has that that nice detailed release notes that I was talking about. So I go to this beta 9, for instance. Has that nice formatted view of the release notes. So that's a quick demo of something I've been working on. It's something that I've had before, but I haven't really modernized to make available. And I'm working to make this that you can see it with Secret Management KeyPass, that you pretty much only have to add like 1 or 2 files. And I'm going to be able to probably get it down to 2. If I go to Secret Management KeyPass, I recently switched this over to using this build system. And all I really had to do was basically put in the workflow for press and put in the build script. And the build script part is optional because press can run it straight from the workflow. But now KeyPass if you look here, it has the same ready to go release with ready to go release notes, including integration with pull requests and everything. And it also works with the environment. So I didn't show this on the other one, but here you have these GitHub environments, which lets you see when things were deployed. And so there's an environment for the pre-release PowerShell gallery. This can be your own custom gallery. This can be your internal, all those kind of things. And so it's all customizable, flexible. So there's the quick demo of it. Looks really neat. Lots of stuff to cover. There's basically no documentation for it yet. It's still early, but I just wanted to show something I'm working on that I'm hoping to be really useful to people to really help them build PowerShell modules much easier, because it was a really intimidating process for me to get into initially when I first started, and I want to really reduce that friction to make it easier for people to produce professional modules and have professional kind of these collaborative open source areas. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. That was awesome. Very cool. A lot going on there. That's awesome. And I'm sure you're seeing the comments that people think it's pretty cool as well. Alrighty. Well, with that, I think we can go to the Q&A portion. I can share the GitHub issue and we can look through that.
All right, you want me to just quickly go over the RFC ones? Because I think I've already looked at a bunch of these.
Oh, yeah, sure. That sounds good.
All right, let me go over those first. So the first one from Ilya was about the PS native command argument passing. So Jim already covered that. Let's see, the next one is about the profiler. And I know Rob has already spent a good amount of time looking at that PR. Similar to kind of like the cleanup PR, we're going to try to see if we can get that into 7.2, but no commitments. But I think the only thing we're committing to is that we'll spend some of our team resources reviewing this stuff. Let's see, we talked about minimal PowerShell. Yeah, the WebAssembly work is something I am personally interested in, but it's not something we're targeting for 7.2. So we'll have to see what we can do, potentially enable the community to move forward with that one. Let's see, I think Justin, yeah, we covered that one. That's the native argument passing. Minimal PowerShell on Azure Sphere. So I guess the other thing I forgot to mention during the minimal PowerShell discussion is we can only target whatever .NET itself runs on, and I don't know if .NET runs on Azure Sphere today, but should that happen, then we can certainly make that work as well. And then, oh yeah, so I think Justin already answered that as well. So I think that covers everything I see in the RFC repo. I don't know if there was anything I missed in the chat window.
I think most of the questions got answered in the chat, but if someone's question didn't get answered, maybe they could alert us or repost it.
I guess, yeah, I don't really see anything. I guess it's just worth mentioning one more time about the new format for this community call. We're trying out because originally when we first had the community call very early on, Teams didn't scale as well. So we weren't able to have everyone join a Teams meeting, which is why we moved to a live meeting, which has its own challenges. But now that Teams itself in the backend can scale to a lot more concurrent users, I personally think this has worked out a lot better than the live meeting format. So we do appreciate any feedback you guys have or any other suggestions how to make this better for the community.
Yeah, definitely. And this allows us to have a reoccurring event so we don't have to worry about it accidentally not getting scheduled last minute or that sort of thing. I guess one other quick note, and we can always end early as well if necessary, is looking forward to PowerShell Summit in 2 weeks, I believe, the last week in April. The team has put together 8 sessions for the conference, so should be a lot of good content there. And I think we all plan to engage in whatever sort of social or other experiences that will go along with that. Looks like we're getting good comments on the format.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can give everyone some time back if there are no other questions. Pause for another second just to let people, in case there's anyone who didn't get their question out. Mike is saying he's going to reach out to see if anyone would like to pop in on post summit meetings each day. I'm sure we can make that happen.
All right, so there's a question about the discussions on the PowerShell repo. So again, this is something we're just trying out to see whether or not it's useful to the community or to the team. The original intent there was really to kind of not have discussions in the repo that are not about the PowerShell 7 code base or the project. So it's not supposed to be a replacement for stuff like Stack Overflow or PowerShell org and stuff like that. Like what I not necessarily want to see is like general PowerShell questions popping up in the discussions. I think there are other forums much better suited for that bigger audience members that can help answer those questions. PowerShell team members are not necessarily monitoring the discussions as heavily as the issue. So again, try that out. And yeah, the Discord, and I think there's a AKMS, is it PS Discord? Oh, it is, yeah, so it's there. So definitely use that, not the discussions on GitHub for those kind of purposes. Yes, there's Slack as well. And I really want to thank everyone in the community for making this such a great community. Makes it fun for me personally, so thanks.
Definitely. Well, I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day today. At least in Seattle, we are having just the most beautiful spring weather. So hopefully everyone else is enjoying nice weather as well. And we can go ahead and end a few minutes early. Think?
Yeah, I think so. Okay. Thanks, Sydney, for taking care of driving this.